Have you ever felt overcome with burnout or stress? Or what about waking up in the morning and feeling like you couldn't get out of bed because the weight of everything just felt too much? I'm in prep mode for 2021, ladies, and my resolutions center around starting the new year ready and thriving. I feel like today's talk with mindset coach Stacy Griner is right on time. Stay with me. This is episode 5.
You're listening to Designing Midlife, a podcast about today's midlife woman. Ladies, we're more youthful, active, and demanding than any midlife generation before. Join Taj as she dispels the notion of crisis, learn to conquer in all facets from health to career, and design the midlife of your dreams.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for episode 5 of Designing Midlife. Before I get into the depth of what I feel is going to be a really meaningful conversation today with my special guest, let me introduce her. We have with us today Stacy Griner. Stacy is a mindset and clarity coach and corporate wellness consultant. She helps ambitious, fed up women ready to exit corporate, amplify their self-worth, articulate their value, and transition into entrepreneurship within 6 to 12 months. Stacy is also the franchise owner of Kika Stretch Studios in Atlanta, which is a holistic stretching studio focusing on releasing the tension that's been trapped in our body for years. I need that. Wish that was in Miami. She is a graduate of Menlo College with a BA in Business Administration and a concentration in HR Management. Prior to opening Kika Stretch Studios, Stacy spent over 20 years in the legal technology space, handling e-discovery project management. In her spare time, she enjoys cycling, running, triathlon, and traveling. Welcome, Stacy Griner. Welcome, Stacy, to the Designing Midlife podcast. I'm so happy to have you here, and I look forward to picking your fabulous brain today and getting all of that wisdom that's out into the world. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I am truly honored.
Great. Listen, when I found you on social, I guess a couple of weeks ago, and I was kind of fumbling around with your content, I think I mentioned in our call that, I started literally taking notes. Everything resonated with me so deeply. And I said, geez, I got to reach out to Stacy and see if we can chat because, of course, you have your audience and you're doing your thing and you have your clients. So in our discovery chat, you mentioned a lot about just your journey of overcoming, in a sense, a season of burnout and I guess essentially depression. And that it led you to just surrendering your life over to seeking better health and wellness. And I felt that was really powerful because that could have took a negative route. And I want to know, are you able to kind of share that journey with us? And if that journey is the reason of what brought you to becoming a mindset coach?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, basically it all started, I was working in law firm management last 20 or so years. And it's law firms are very high stress environments. We work long hours. And over the years, I just really started feeling quite dissatisfied with where my life was. I felt like I was just always having to be on. At the time before phones, it was Blackberries, but for over 10, 15 years, I was literally attached to work all the time. And I like to tell people it was great until it wasn't. I went through this period of where I found triathlon and found cycling and all of that. And it was for a while something that filled that sort of need to sort of detach a bit. But then, one day I woke up and I recognized I literally wasn't doing that anymore. My bikes were in the closet. Literally, I had took them apart and put them in the closet. And that was really profound to me. And then on a random Monday morning, I went to work and I had been feeling really sort of just dissatisfied for a long time. just feeling like just overwhelmed and just sort of burnt out. And I went to work on a random Monday morning, and someone that I work with attended a meeting that morning and left the meeting. And a few hours later, they told us he was tragically struck by a train. And we were like, how do you get tragically struck by a train in the suburb? And so, you know, logic-based minds will tell you that this person took his own life. And this is someone I work with. We were in a small office, so it's not like I didn't know his family, like his wife, his child. And we had talked about triathlon. I had connected him with his triathlon coach. And I was just like, even still talking about it, it just gives me chills because I was speechless, because I kept thinking the entire time that he seemed really normal. Like, I know what that is. I get up every morning and I do that same thing. I act as if everything's okay. And inside I'm just like in turmoil. And so I sort of kept, you know, after that happened, it was very tragic. It was very sad for our community as a whole where I worked. I realized that I really liked the people I work with, but I was really not happy. And then one day I woke up and really could not get out of bed. And that was the spiraling point for me. I wound up taking a leave of absence from work, got myself together, went to see a professional, and really started to question what I was doing. Like, why was I not happy? I recognized that I really needed to get back connected with mind, body, spirit, because I had just burnt out. And your body, when you get to that point where your body's completely burnt out, your body is not even making the right chemicals to sort of get you out of that spiral. And so I needed to reset. And to be honest, when I look back, that was the longest time in I had been at, you know, that job for over 18 years. And I had never taken a medical leave of absence. I had never been out of work for more than 2 weeks. I never took all of my vacation time. So I was sitting on like 2.5 months of vacation time that I had never used. And I realized just how out of balance I was. And so I took some time off, went back, and just literally within a month of me getting back, it was just like back to waking up to hundreds of emails. And so I said, well, let me start taking some of my vacation time. And I started traveling and stuff. And then one day I was in Guatemala, which is a country I love. And I was just like, what am I doing? I don't need this. It gives me anxiety when I have to think about going back and having to be on call all the time. And so I literally decided then and there that I wanted to design my life the way. And then when I thought about it, I thought about how 20 some odd years earlier, I had wrote in a journal that I wanted to retire by the time I was 50. And so the fact that I was about to sort of manifest that was just so liberating to me. And so I did not have all the answers. I wouldn't say, you know, I had some financial means, but that wasn't even a factor for me. I was just like, whatever, I'll work for Starbucks, like what's the worst that can happen, right? Like, I'll go make some coffee. I was sitting there at Lake Atelan in Guatemala and just having this sense of peace overwhelm me. And so I got back from my trip from Guatemala, and I literally, it was like early June, late May, early June is when I came back and I said, hey guys, and I gave notice. And I said, July 3rd will be my last day working, and July 4th will truly be my Independence Day. And I've been sort of on this journey ever since. It was 2018.
2018, wow. Yeah, I said it a few moments ago, that could have taken such a negative turn, right? Look at your coworker, the ultimate negative turn. And can you attribute anything going on in your life to help you like have that clarity or that courage? Because it took both, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, I will say I was that kid that was like reading self-help books in middle and high school. So I've always had this idea. I mean, I was a young parent. I got pregnant at 18, which again was like a big shift, right? Because I was supposed to go off to college and now I had a kid and life changed. And this is why I feel like mindset is so powerful, because I literally set the intention that this was not going to define me. And I was not only going to survive, I was going to thrive. And that literally is the type of mindset that you have to have. You have to like sort of understand that you can bet on yourself, and that when you do that and you connect with that energy and vibration, it's never going to let you down, because it is so spiritually connected. And spiritually, when I say spiritually, people listening to this, attribute whatever word you use, God, Allah, Jehovah, whoever, but that it won't let you down. And so I do attribute the fact that I was in that dark moment, and I had that realization, like I said, like, there were opportunities there to go back and to sort of just continue along that path of being burnt out. But I was so deeply affected by it. And then literally I had never had someone that close. Like, I just saw you in the hall, very life altering. And it's such a beautiful, warm spirit, like so kind, like it just blew me away. But it also scared me in the sense that it's like, oh, I have to get off this path, because I knew I was getting up, acting as if everything was okay, and just, continuing to move forward, and knew that I was on the wrong path when I couldn't get out the bed, which is so unlike me. Like, I literally could not get out.
Right. Very life altering. Very, yeah. Well, it's clearly a gift for you. I mean, could you say when you were in Guatemala that, this is what I need to be doing? Did you feel kind of like a calling, or?
One thing I did come back from Guatemala with the thought was that I really wanted to change the culture of work. So I actually got invited to speak on a couple of panels, which is how I started with my consulting, my wellness consulting, because like I said, I kind of left. I decided I was going to retire early. I was like, okay, I have, some means that I can sort of rely on. But I didn't understand exactly what my next steps were going to be. But I knew I wanted to be of service. And so when I was in Guatemala, and this thought process came to me, was like, why is it that in these industries where it's sort of celebrated to work like that, like work to that degree, and it's rewarded in a lot of ways, which is counterproductive to the whole work-life balance, thing they talk about, right? Like, how can you have work?
Very counterproductive.
I lean more towards work-life integration anyway, right? And this is a journey, right? This is a journey. I didn't think of this way in my 20s, right? But I'm almost 50, so I'm thinking this way now. And I may not in 10 years be thinking exactly this way, it'd be something else. But I came away from that experience in Guatemala trying to understand how I can help organizations, and particularly small companies, because a smaller company is in the process of defining their culture, right? Whereas mature companies, you sort of have to unpack so much for them to change. Like, if you think banking, investment banking, law firms, these are industries that historically work, doctors, like, just work really long hours, which is just not healthy. And so how do you begin to talk to organizations on how to change so that wellness is part of their culture, not like a Fitbit challenge, but part of the culture, and understanding that maybe it's something as simple as, people in the C-suite understanding and messaging that just because I'm up working at 2 a.m. doesn't mean that you have to be responding to my emails at 2 a.m., right? But that's not really what happens. What generally happens is we want to, particularly for law firms, is like you really needed to be on all the time with answering, right? And so you had this culture that says we have to respond to emails immediately. And what that does is sort of, especially if you're young and you're building your career and they're incentivizing that behavior, you just sort of find yourself in a very spiraling type of cycle.
Oh, you referenced something really powerful that I always think of myself, because especially in America, we celebrate that grind mentality, right? And if you're not grinding, right, you're not grinding hard and whatever those other phrases are, then you're not doing anything. Made to feel that we're not going to achieve our goals if we're not waking up 4:00 in the morning and going to bed at midnight. And, like that's how we're made to feel. I'm with you where that is concerned, because I'm not of that grind mentality, and I feel that I can still achieve my goals. How do you then debunk that idea that you have to buy into the grind mentality, and just be able to trust yourself to slow down and still have confidence that you're going to earn a good living, you're still going to have a good lifestyle, because that all of that is such a big part of the mental.
Yeah, it is. And I think there's two things I want to say to that. First is that there is a mindset shift that has to come along, and it is around the idea of scarcity, right? First, the idea of that we can't possibly have that type of life, right? You can't live slower and earn more, or you can't live slower and attain a certain degree of success. Those two things don't really topics or don't come up in conversation in the same conversation, right? And I myself was part of the grind culture. And I even still struggle with this. I had a conversation with my partner, and I was telling her, I was like, babe, why do I have resistance to, like, I say I want slower living, but I somehow feel like I'm having resistance to actually really applying that, like really slowing down. And it's because we've just been trained to do that, right? All the models of success, like if you look at all the people, like, and I'm guilty of this too, I had to throw it out the window just recently with the whole like morning routine, and it was like 11 things you had to do with it. I was like, this is like 3 hours, like who does this? But this is, our society really highlights this as the way to success. I know I was a huge fan of Tim Ferriss when he was talking about the 4-hour work week.
I studied that book inside, outside, backwards. Yeah.
Right. And it's still literally a book that I continue to go back to, because what I love about, designing our life the way we want it, especially here in midlife, is that, I am at that point where I am truly designing my life the way I want it. So I'm not working weekends, or I'm not working, like I'm really being intentional and then leaning into the knowing and understanding that there is abundance in this earth. There's more than enough. And that all my needs are met and always will be, as long as I am in alignment with what I say I want, and working towards that. Right. So, and I'm still in that process. And this is the journey of life, right? Which is, I am a firm believer in growth mindset. We grow through our experiences every day. And I am learning to lean more into saying, Stacy, you want that slower life. You don't want to work 80-hour weeks. And what does that look like? I have friends who are now operating like $1 million businesses. And I'm like, I don't like that, because that's too much work.
Right. And stress. Right.
And they're like, and their tagline is like, oh, you just build teams. But I'm a project manager by background. Build teams, but those teams still need direction, right? And so I love the fact, I would love to see, which I love, that you've got this platform, that we start to really bring to the forefront and have those conversations about designing a life that is still as rich, and not just monetarily rich, but rich in abundance in so many ways, and start to really promote that, so that we can start changing the culture, right? And so that's what I'm really passionate about. And it came to me at midlife, and through talking with so many other people who are also in this sort of stage, I'm finding that we're having more deeper conversations around that, around being able to have that freedom to design it the way we want.
It came to me midlife as well, too, maybe 2 years ago. And it really came as a result of a breakdown of, I was having heart palpitations, and I was, the first time, I think I talk about it in my episode 2, or maybe 1, where, I just share what brought me here, because it was the first time in my life I was manifesting stress in a physical way. It was real, and I was always a busybody. I was always on the grind and 20 different projects, and I loved it. I thrived on that. I didn't feel right if I wasn't busy, because that is our culture. But then when my body said, I don't know about you, but I'm done. I mean, then I really had to reassess, and I was forced in a way to kind of explore, like you're saying, a different way of a growth mindset, and just manifesting abundance in different ways, and designing a life that, I'm not even going to use the term work balance, but just designing a life that is more in tune with what I'd always envisioned for myself, but I was going about it in a wrong way. And like you, this midlife season has totally brought me there. And when we spoke last week, you use this term that you just mentioned, just slower living. And how would you really define that? Because I'm sure a lot of people don't even know what that is, right? Who are still like on the grind. How does that even, not it beyond just restructuring your calendar? Like, what does that really mean?
Yeah, I think so. I'm still in what I would call a learning process of what that means for me. And again, designing it the way you want it. For me, it's being more mindful, right? I have a tendency to get up and charge at the day, whether it's, setting your alarm clock for 4 a.m. and doing 5 workouts and taking 10 meetings and, just around this whole structure of the calendar, being more in a natural state of like waking up without an alarm and being intentional about the morning, your process, and understanding you don't have to be at 100 miles an hour, taking more walks, doing things that fulfill what makes me feel good, right? Like, for example, one of the things that I've always wanted to do, I was a teen mom, and I had an amazing life. I have an amazing life, and I've always wanted to sort of give back in that way. Like, there are still young girls having babies. I mean, thankfully, it doesn't seem like it was as bad as it was when I was coming up, and I was one of those people. And thank God prayer works, because the kids have turned out fine. But going to serve in that way, and that's what I was talking about, finding richness in other ways, learning how to, COVID has threw us into all types of new areas where we're now spending more time at home. Like, in some aspects, that's a beautiful thing, because families have been separated in a lot of ways, because, it's 2 working parents, the kids are at home, and maybe your dinners are rushed, and now you're just home all the time, and it's sort of bringing you back into this home community. And so spending that time together, being out in nature. So I think it's really figuring out what that richness is for you. Like, I have this thing where I say I'm hammocking. Like, that's a thing for me now. Like, I'm hammocking. I love, there's another woman, I forget her name, but she has on Instagram, it's called the Nap Ministry. Really, I'm like, yes, girl. And here's the thing. Here it is, I'm in midlife, and I have never been able to nap. And now I nap. And it is the most amazing thing ever. And I'm like, and those are the types of things I mean by like slower living, like really being able to lean, and then to recognize that you still can have these other things too. And this goes along with, also, the life coaching piece of it, of teaching women how to ask for what they're worth, and understand that you ask for what you're worth. And if you have an abundance mindset, you're going to get it. You're going to receive it. And so not necessarily worrying about the how, but just living it. And that's, I always say I keep my hands open like this, because closed is not receiving the abundance that's flowing. But I keep my hands open, my arms wide open for life to flow. And so that's kind of where I am with it. So I'm being very intentional about following things that mean something to me, working less, but still being able to earn.
Yeah. And you touch upon a thing, because earning a living is up there as just as being healthy. That's a stressor for us, being able to provide for ourselves, or whether we have kids or, parents to be able to care for. And for women, one of the huge issues, like you say, is having the confidence to charge what we're worth. And I remember reading about that on your website, help women create that mindset that based on all of your years of experience, all of your gifts, all of your expertise, everything that you've gained, how long your resume is. Sometimes we don't even see it. Sometimes we undervalue that so much and just kind of like, oh, it's no big deal. Yeah, I did this for 20 years. No, that's a big deal. That's an expertise for you. And
Yeah, earning a comparable living, even though like you're working less, so it's like the essential of like, oh, I don't have to work 60-hour weeks to make, six figures. I could work, 20 hours a week and make six figures or whatever, or take on X amount of projects. I have one client who is wanting to adopt a sort of teacher. She's not a teacher, but she wants that schedule. She's like, I'll work like maybe like 6 months, and then the summer months I'll take off, right? And it's the beautiful thing of being able to design it that way, however you want.
I believe in coaches, and sometimes it does take another person to help you clear the brain fog and say, no, honey, what are you crazy? You're charging $125 an hour? No, double that.
Right now.
and be confident with it, because there's probably men out there charging $375 an hour for the same knowledge you have. And so, yeah, that's very real. And, we're still as women so far behind with the whole idea of equal pay. That's a whole other topic in itself, especially coming, when you talk about corporate America. And I feel like also because of technology, that brought us, you're in Wichita, I'm in Miami, we would have not met otherwise, right? But technology not only levels that playing field, but it also provides more ways for us to be able to earn that living in a creative way as a result of all of the knowledge that we have, our knowledge base.
Absolutely. And I would encourage women, because I hear this often, to don't let Instagram fool you. You don't need 1,000 followers. You need to utilize your network. You need to amplify your self-worth. Understand that you are capable. You are smart. You can do hard things. You have years of experience that you just have to learn how to leverage that and be able to articulate that to someone else. I mean, my very first opportunity after I left my corporate role was consulting. And I never forget, and it came from a woman who I met from speaking on a panel about self-care in the workplace, the importance of self-care in the workplace. And she connected me with a startup. And it gave me the opportunity to pitch a proposal to a startup. And I'll never forget being like, oh my gosh, like the palpitations of my heart asking for that retainer, right? And then I remember clicking that button and being like, oh my God. But I also remember before clicking that button, overthinking about how much to ask for.
And doubting yourself.
Right. And then I literally was like, if they'd say no, you're in the same exact space as you were. And I remember clicking the button being like, oh, and then waiting, right? And then having all these thoughts and really having to really dig deep into my toolbox and understanding that every time those negative thoughts came up, how to reframe it to a more powerful, affirming story. Like, because, if they don't answer right away, and then I come from a culture where if like you get answers right away, somebody will say receipt of the, like, hey, thanks for sending this, we'll give like something to validate that they've seen you. And that was like the way I got to that was not because I had 10,000 followers on Instagram or Facebook, but it was from networking with people, being able to believe in myself, that I could provide that service, being able to articulate that value to others, and then just putting myself out there and betting on myself. And that was like, that's what I mean, and this is why I have this program called the Leap Accelerator. And the way my program is set up, it literally is the first half of the program, all we deal with is your mindset, because you have to get through the mindset piece of it. And then even once you do this mindset work, and I'm sure you can affirm this as well, it does not go away. Even once you've been in business, it's not like you're not going to have a negative thought. You're going to, right? It's just how do you move past it? What tools do you use so that when those negative thoughts come up, they don't paralyze you into not making a decision?
I saw a really interesting blog post on your website, and it says the 3 C's for Gen X women to thrive during uncertain times. And that was the first blog post that I saw. And I was like, oh, what's been in recent memory more uncertain than 2020, than COVID going on this year, the election, and talk to us about that. What are our 3 C's?
The first, I'm sure I've talked about confidence, because confidence is about what I always talk about. I always talk about needing clarity, like gaining clarity. What are you interested in? Like really identifying what's important to you. And I will say this, especially at midlife. I always say so many women prior to midlife, we live for we live for our kids, we live for our spouses, everything. Like women are notorious for putting people before themselves. And so really getting clear about what do you want and why do you want it, right? So really getting that clarity on what you want and what is your why, and then that connection, really understanding how to utilize your network. And I talked about that a little bit earlier, because again, we live in a culture where right now everyone has you sort of thinking, if you don't have a certain amount of followers, this, that, and the other, that you somehow can't make it. And I'm like, do you know how many people live on the earth? With the barrier of entry being low in terms of having access, if you got an internet connection, your customer base is millions. There is enough to go around. The idea of scarcity is like, or that you have to hold on to things, right? And so I really say, especially during COVID, like I literally reached out to my network, particularly for my stretch studio in Atlanta, where we had to close down, and then we had to, we got to be able to reopen, networking with other small businesses in the area. Like you really have to have those 3 C's in order to even like make it through these difficult times, because that's what's going to help us manage. And I will say, like, this isn't going anywhere. This is the new normal. You have to adapt. I think I've pivoted like 3-4 times this year. It's been hard.
Yeah, it is, but you just have to keep pushing. And, when I process those 3 C's for me, and the confidence is a revolving door, right? You got to catch yourself when the doubts start coming in, and you're like, I don't know. And, and then you have ideas and you're like, well, has my time passed? Am I too old for this? Should I really pursue this? All of that starts to come into play, and it's kind of knocking down your confidence. And then clarity in our, where we are in life. And, sometimes that brain fog comes in, and it's like, wait, I also got to testify to the idea that you don't have to have a huge following. I mean, my Instagram for the podcast is a very small community on Instagram itself. I've been really excited with the amount of downloads that I've received. I'm already over 1,000, and so grateful for that as a new podcast. But when I think about connection, and just when I push through with that confidence and reach out to folks like yourself and others that I've reached out to, I've had some of the most amazing talks. I've made some of the best connections that didn't happen otherwise. And, everything we spoke about today, just living slower and being intentional and just really finding that clarity. What do you want? What is going to make you happy? Not for the family, not for the children, not for your partner, but just for you first. Just prioritize you first. And that's not being selfish. That's necessary.
Oh, it is absolutely necessary. Say that again. Yes. And I think for my community, Gen X and young boomers, it's so important for us to understand that, I like to say life doesn't shrink as we age. It expands to so many more opportunities if we just allow ourselves to be open to it. We are living so much longer. There are so many more opportunities. Like we talked about, the barrier of entry to things are so much lower, and our reach is so much wider. And so you have value to bring to someone. Each and every one of us has gifts, and tapping into it. And sure, it does take time sometimes to find that. Sure, it does take some time to unlearn a lot of things. Again, we have to unlearn, not amplifying our self-worth and value, because as women, we've always been taught to sort of shrink. And so be loud, be proud, go ahead. Like I tell people all the time, it's like, it's okay to brag on yourself. It's okay. Because if it doesn't start with you and you're looking for outside validation for it, right? And, and it's simple things like, people underestimate that whole affirmation process of simple I am statements, but it is powerful. The way you talk to yourself is powerful. And that's where confidence comes in, because the more you reaffirm yourself, the more your confidence starts to grow. And again, so many of us are, I think the thing that, sort of saddens me a bit, and I've been sharing this a lot lately, are so many articles about women who are forced into early retirement, right? Because of COVID. It's like a lot of employers are either downsizing or they're giving severance packages, and people are just like lost about what are their next steps. And then imagine having to go back into the workforce or trying to interview in the workforce. We all know ageism exists. We all know how hard it is for Gen X and boomers to be out in the interviewing world. We're not saying that people aren't hiring them, but we're just saying it is a challenge. Our culture doesn't celebrate this sort of sandwich generation. I'm trying to get women in particular to really understand how to take what their experience and their expertise that they've had and design a life that they really love. And sure, I'm not saying you don't have to go work for someone else, but if you identify these things, you might can have something on the side, or you can just take a full leap into entrepreneurship full time. But my program, the Leap Accelerator, is specific about that. It's like, okay, we work on the first half of the program is really about teaching you how to shift your mindset, doing all the mindset work. And then the second half is really about gaining clarity on what type of business you want to do. A lot of times, the easiest one I tell folks to kind of get into is consulting, because share what you know, and it shouldn't be that hard if you are able to articulate your value and you are able to tap into your network, it shouldn't be that difficult to get your first client.
I think that niche of just targeting women in our generation and older, and also the whole idea of shifting from corporate or being forced out of corporate based on what's happening this year, it's such a huge need. And absolutely, it starts with the mindset, because that's where we get hung up. That's where we get stuck. I can't thank you again enough for spending this time with me. And before I even try to bring this to a close, I know you've mentioned your program, but share with everyone, where do people find you? What are the handles? Whatever the hashtags? What you be shameless, Stacy. Be shameless.
Absolutely. So I think the best place to find me would be on LinkedIn. Send me a LinkedIn connection. Have a conversation start. The second best place to find me is on Instagram, where you found me, of course. Is I am Stacy Griner. It's IAMSTACYGRINER. And I'm also on Facebook as well. And then my website is stacygriner.com.
stacygriner.com. That's where I found your Instagram at I am Stacy Griner. So much great, just gems of knowledge and empowering wisdom for us Gen X ladies. And please check Stacy out, guys. Stacy, thank you again. Time was fun and well spent. Thank you so much.